Okay, I got a question about how to do 6D from chapter 14.3. This is a long and involved chapter where we develop linear models with like multiple explanatory variables. So that's what's happened in this problem in parts A through C. We've gotten rid of two of the explanatory variables here. And now we need to draw some different scatter plots to make sure there's no significant patterns. And we also need to do one box and whisker plot to make sure there's no outliers. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this in StatCrunch. So the first thing is to load the data. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Load the data. Hold on a second while I'm going to make this split screen so it's a little easier. Okay, so there's all our data. And here's the problem. Okay, so like I said, we get rid of what x1 and we get rid of x1 and x3. So we're going to run our regression. It's multiple. So there's multiple explanatory variables. Y is the y, and then x2 and x4 are going to be our explanatory variables. We got rid of x1 and x2. Okay. Now there's a couple of things. So the first one, you want to draw the residuals versus the fitted values. Okay. Yeah, we actually have that here. Okay, so this is residuals versus predicted for the graph options. So we can compute that. And you have the y residuals versus predicted values. Notice one thing that they don't necessarily have the same scale. So like this is 100 down here. So this point right here is definitely not on this graph, right? Because it would be well over here and over here. So you can cross A out, right? This definitely looks most like C. But there's space on this graph right here because they go from their scale goes down to 100 and this only goes to 200. So it looks like this little he kind of looks like he has a head to me. It looks like this little guy's right against the y-axis, but that's only because the scale is different. Okay. So yeah, that's how we see that one. All right, what else do we have? We need to draw a scatter plot of the residuals versus x2. And you'll notice, like, if I go to edit here and go back to my regression settings, we don't have x values versus the residuals. So what you can do here is what you're going to do is add columns to your data table here that have both the residuals, right? You could have done this on the last part too. You could have done the residuals and the predicted values. But I'm just going to add the residuals right now. So you're going to see what happens is, okay, in addition to having all my explanatory variables, my y, it also has my residuals. Now what I can do, even though I couldn't do the scatter plot right in the regression settings, I can just go to scatter plot here and do the x2s are x variable, and then the residuals are my y variable. Okay, and this is going to give me the scatter plot of the residuals versus x2. Okay, again, note that the scale might not be the same. It looks like the y scale is the same on both these, but again, the x scale goes down to 0 here for these guys. So looking at these, comparing which ones might be, looks like the closest things would be this one and this one right here. Trying to see what kind of differentiates them. Yeah, I guess one reason I would know it would be A and not D would be that it looks like there's this point directly on having a y of 0, and that doesn't seem to be happening on my, oh, it does, but it's way out here. You know, this point right here doesn't seem to be here on my scatter plot because it's a little above 0, like this point is right here. So that's just one little way. There's some fine points. It's definitely not B and C though. So I hope that helps on that. Now we have to do X4 versus the residuals. And since we've already got the residuals column and we've got X4, I can just go back to my scatter plot settings and just change X2 to X4. It'll redraw the scatter plot with X4 now on the X-axis and the residuals on the Y-axis. Okay, whoops. So now we got a picture that looks like this. And probably the two that look most tempting to me are this one and this one. But in this area of the graph, on this one, it definitely looks a lot more like my scatter plot on StatCrunch. In here, it seems to be kind of similar. But over here, it's much different. So, yeah. All right, and last thing is just to do a box plot with the residuals. You've already got the residuals, a column full of the residual data. So just go to graph, go box plot, and you want to do the residuals. And I always do them horizontally because that's the way the answers are, that you can do them vertically. But then you have to kind of turn it in your head. Okay, and so we look at the diagram and just match whichever one. We notice there's not any outliers here. And let's see, they all have the median in about the right place. Some of them, the right whisker is longer than the left whisker, which doesn't seem to be the case with my with my StatCrunch box plot. So that means we can get rid of these two where the right whisker is kind of longer than the left whisker. And these two, they both have a short right whisker, but this one has an outlier, and I don't see any outlier on my box plot here. So I hope that helps drawing all these graphs. It's not as easy as it was with the simple linear, where you could get most of the graphs in the regression section. You got to kind of lay down this column of residual data and then just use the graphing features on my StatCrunch.